My name is Paula Coleman. I am 35 years old, and I have been sending my parents $1,000 every week for the past 3 years. I worked hard to become a successful financial advisor so I could give back to them after all their sacrifices. My husband James, our daughter Lily, and I were excited for her 8th birthday celebration with the grandparents she adored. Everything was perfect until they never showed up. When I called to check on them, I never expected what my father would say next. If you're watching this, please tell me where you are viewing from. Hit the like and subscribe buttons and stay with me through this painful but important family lesson. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Seattle, where my parents, Thomas and Margaret Wilson, worked tirelessly to provide for our family. We never had luxuries, but my parents made sure I never felt the weight of our financial struggles. Dad worked as a manager at a manufacturing plant, and Mom took on various administrative jobs. They were hardworking people with simple dreams who believed in honesty and family above all else. Our lives changed dramatically when I was 15. The manufacturing plant where Dad had worked for almost 20 years shut down unexpectedly. I still remember the night he came home, his face ashen and defeated. He sat at our small kitchen table, hands trembling, as he told Mom he had lost his job. I was supposed to be doing homework in my room, but I overheard everything from the hallway. That night, I made a promise to myself that one day I would make sure my parents would never worry about money again. Dad tried to find comparable work, but manufacturing jobs were disappearing from Seattle. He eventually took 2 part-time jobs, working longer hours for significantly less pay. Mom picked up extra shifts at the doctor's office where she worked as a receptionist. Still, it was not enough. Bills piled up. The constant worry aged my parents visibly within months. I started working after school at 16, taking any job I could find. On weekdays, I stocked shelves at the local grocery store. On weekends, I babysat for neighbors. Every dollar I earned went into the family fund, though my parents always tried to refuse it. When I insisted, tears would well in my mother's eyes, and Dad would squeeze my shoulder and promise that things would get better. Despite working nearly 20 hours a week, I maintained straight A's in school. Studying often meant staying up until 2 a.m. after work shifts, but I was determined. Education was my ticket to financial stability, not just for me, but for my family. My guidance counselor helped me apply for every scholarship possible. When the acceptance letter from Washington University arrived with a full academic scholarship, my parents threw the only party we had had in years, inviting the whole neighborhood, despite barely being able to afford the refreshments. I was the first in our family to attend college. On move-in day, Mom couldn't stop crying. Dad kept taking photos with the old camera that had been his father's, telling everyone who would listen that his daughter was going to be somebody important. The pride in his eyes gave me strength during the hardest moments of those university years. College was overwhelming at first. Many of my classmates came from wealthy families and had never worried about money. Meanwhile, I worked at the campus library and took tutoring jobs to send a little money home each month, even though my parents insisted I keep it. The financial divide became abundantly clear when I met James during sophomore year in my economics class. James Taylor came from a privileged background that was completely foreign to me. His father was a successful surgeon and his mother a corporate attorney. He drove a car that cost more than my parents' house and talked about family vacations to Europe like they were weekend trips to the beach. Despite our differences, we connected over a shared passion for financial systems and social justice. He had a sensitivity and awareness of his privilege that drew me to him. When James invited me home for Thanksgiving during junior year, I was terrified. His family's house in the Seattle suburbs was more like a mansion, with its manicured lawn and imposing columns. His parents were polite but distant. His mother asked probing questions about my family that made me uncomfortable. I could feel them evaluating whether I was good enough for their son. James noticed my discomfort and later apologized for his parents' behavior. That night, he told me he loved me for the first time and promised that their opinions would not change how he felt. Our relationship only grew stronger as we finished college together. When it came time for James to meet my parents, I was equally nervous, but for different reasons. Our apartment was tiny, the furniture worn, and I worried James would see my background as something to pity. Instead, he charmed my parents with genuine interest in their lives. He helped Dad fix the leaky kitchen sink and discussed gardening with Mom, complimenting her resilient houseplants that thrived despite minimal sunlight. Still, I could sense my parents' hesitation. Later, Mom confided their concerns. They worried that the difference in our backgrounds would eventually create a divide. Dad was more direct, asking whether I was sure James could respect someone who came from so little. Their words hurt, but I understood their fears stemmed from love and their own insecurities. I spent the next year trying to bridge the gap between the two families. Holiday gatherings were awkward at first, but slowly walls began to come down. James stood up to his parents when they made insensitive comments about my family's financial situation. My parents gradually saw that James valued me for who I was, not where I came from. By the time we graduated and James proposed, both families had reached an uneasy but functional relationship. My parents gave us their blessing with teary eyes and open arms. Mom hugged me tight and whispered that all she ever wanted was for me to be loved and secure. Dad shook my hand and told him he was getting the best woman in the world. In that moment, I felt the weight of their sacrifices and renewed my silent promise to take care of them one day. After graduation, I secured a position at Westfield Financial Advisors, while James began his career at a prestigious investment firm. We started in entry-level positions, but both of us were determined to climb the corporate ladder. I worked 60-hour weeks, taking on additional client consultations and volunteering for the projects no one else wanted. My dedication paid off when I was promoted to junior advisor after just 18 months. With our combined incomes, James and I saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. The day we signed the papers, I called my parents immediately. Dad cleared his throat several times before speaking, his voice thick with emotion. Mom kept saying how proud she was. They came over that weekend to help us paint and unpack. Watching my father meticulously trim the edges of our living room walls, I slipped a check into his jacket pocket for $50 as a thank you. When he found it later, he tried to return it. I insisted it was payment for their help, but we both knew it was more. It was the beginning of me fulfilling my promise to take care of them. After some back and forth, he reluctantly accepted, and I saw relief flash briefly in his eyes before he hugged me. As James and I settled into our careers and home, my parents seemed to grow more comfortable with our relationship. Dad would call James for advice about retirement accounts, and Mom would ask about insurance policies. These conversations gave me hope that the class divide was finally healing. When I discovered I was pregnant 2 years into our marriage, my parents' excitement was boundless. Mom immediately started knitting baby blankets and buying secondhand baby clothes she found at thrift stores. Dad researched the safest cribs and car seats, printing out Consumer Reports articles and highlighting the important parts. Their enthusiasm touched me deeply. Lily was born on a rainy April morning after 18 hours of labor. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I felt a love so overwhelming it brought me to tears. James stood beside us, equally mesmerized by our daughter's tiny features. When my parents arrived at the hospital, Mom burst into happy tears. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, uncharacteristically quiet until James placed Lily in his arms. The tender way he cradled her, whispering promises to his granddaughter, confirmed that our family bonds transcended past tensions. The early years with Lily were exhausting, but filled with joy. My parents visited nearly every weekend, bringing homemade food and small gifts for Lily. They seemed to revel in their roles as grandparents. Dad would spend hours building elaborate block towers for Lily to knock down, while Mom read her the same stories she had once read to me. Watching them, I felt we had finally achieved the family harmony I had always wanted. Meanwhile, my career continued to flourish. When Lily turned 3, I was promoted to senior financial advisor with a substantial salary increase and bonus structure. The promotion came with longer hours and more responsibility, but it also meant I could finally provide my parents with consistent financial support. One evening, over dinner at their house, I broached the subject carefully. Their kitchen ceiling was water damaged from a leaking roof they couldn't afford to fix. Their 15-year-old car sat in the driveway with multiple warning lights illuminated on the dashboard. Dad had delayed retirement because their savings weren't enough. I told them I wanted to set up a weekly transfer of $1,000 to help them live more comfortably. Mom immediately refused, saying they couldn't accept such generosity. Dad stared at his plate, pride warring with practicality. I explained that I was in a position to help without any strain on my own finances. This wasn't charity, I insisted, but my way of thanking them for all they had sacrificed. After much discussion, they reluctantly agreed, but only if I promised to stop if it ever became a burden. The following week, I set up automatic transfers and created separate accounts in my name that they could access. I wanted to make the arrangement as dignified as possible for them. When the first transfer went through, Mom called crying, saying they would use the money to finally fix the roof. Dad sent a text message that simply read, "Thank you, sweetheart. We love you." Over the next few months, I noticed positive changes in my parents' lives. They replaced their dangerous car with a reliable used sedan. They fixed long-neglected home repairs. Mom quit her part-time cashier job at the grocery store that had been hard on her arthritis. They even joined a local community center for seniors that offered social activities. Each improvement in their quality of life reinforced that I had made the right decision. The weekly transfers became routine, and my parents expressed their gratitude regularly. Mom would call with updates about their improved life, while Dad would send photos of home improvements or new experiences they enjoyed. Their appreciation made every dollar worthwhile. Gradually, though, I noticed subtle shifts in their behavior. The thank yous became less frequent. Updates about how they spent the money stopped altogether. When I visited, I noticed new furniture, expensive electronics, and designer clothes in their closets. These changes surprised me, but I reminded myself that they deserved nice things after years of sacrifice. More concerning were their comments about our parenting choices. Mom questioned why we enrolled Lily in a public preschool instead of a private one, given our income. Dad made remarks about our modest family vacations, suggesting we should take Lily to Disney World or Europe like James's family had done. These comments stung, but I brushed them aside as generational differences in parenting philosophy. I tried to focus on the positive aspects of our relationship. My parents seemed happier and healthier than they had been in years. If they occasionally overstepped with unsolicited advice or spent the money differently than I expected, wasn't that a small price to pay for their security and comfort? I convinced myself that any tension was temporary and would resolve with time and open communication. The first major red flag appeared about 18 months after I started the weekly payments. Mom called bubbling with excitement about their upcoming Alaskan cruise. The 2-week luxury voyage cost nearly $15,000, almost 4 months of the money I had been sending. I was shocked but tried to hide my reaction. They had never taken a vacation that cost more than a few hundred before. When I asked about the expense, Mom casually mentioned they deserved to treat themselves after years of frugality. I couldn't argue with that sentiment, but something about the conversation left me uneasy. They hadn't consulted me or even mentioned they were considering such an extravagant trip. While it was technically their money to spend, the lack of transparency bothered me. Still, I smiled through the call and told Mom to take lots of pictures. A month after they returned from the cruise, Dad called to tell me they had put a deposit down on a new car, a luxury model that cost more than my first year's salary. When I expressed surprise, his tone became defensive. He reminded me that the money was a gift with no strings attached. I quickly backpedaled, assuring him I was just surprised, not disapproving. After hanging up, I paced our kitchen, trying to process my complicated feelings. James found me there, staring out the window. He asked what was wrong, and I shared my concerns about my parents' spending habits. He listened carefully before suggesting gently that perhaps my parents were compensating for years of financial restriction, or maybe, he added carefully, that they were taking advantage of my generosity. I dismissed the latter possibility immediately, unable to imagine my hardworking, honest parents being opportunistic. Around the same time, I noticed another troubling pattern. My parents began missing Lily's school events and family gatherings with increasing frequency. They missed her kindergarten play, claiming they had a conflicting doctor's appointment. They skipped our annual family barbecue because they were too tired from a weekend shopping trip. When Lily made the honor roll in first grade, they promised to come to the ceremony, but called that morning saying their car was making strange noises. Each excuse seemed plausible in isolation, but collectively, they formed a disturbing pattern. More concerning was how our communication had changed. They rarely called just to chat anymore. Our conversations revolved around money, upcoming bills, or things they wanted to purchase. When I tried to steer discussions toward Lily's achievements or my work projects, they would listen politely before circling back to financial matters. The hurt I felt was profound, but difficult to articulate. I had expected the financial support to bring us closer, but instead it seemed to be creating distance. Still, I made excuses for their behavior. They were enjoying freedom after decades of financial stress. They were older and had less energy for family events. They showed love in different ways. I repeated these rationalizations whenever doubt crept in. James was less willing to overlook the changes. After my parents missed Lily's dance recital despite promising to attend, he voiced his concerns more directly. We were getting ready for bed when he mentioned that my parents hadn't seen Lily in nearly 2 months, despite living just 30 minutes away. I get that they're enjoying their financial freedom, Paula, but it seems like they only contact us when it involves money now. Have you noticed that pattern? He asked, his voice gentle but firm. I bristled at his observation, even though part of me recognized its truth. They're just adjusting to this new phase of life, I defended. They spent decades struggling. Of course they want to enjoy themselves now. James sat beside me on the bed. But at what cost? Lily asked about them 3 times today. She notices their absence, even if you try to shield her from it. The disappointment in her eyes had been difficult to witness. I had told her they weren't feeling well. Another small lie added to a growing list of excuses I made on their behalf. Maybe we should talk to them, James suggested. Not accusatory, just an honest conversation about how family time mattered too. I promised to consider it, but I kept finding reasons to delay the discussion. Part of me feared facing the reality that money had changed my relationship with my parents in ways I never anticipated. What if James was right? What if my financial support had weakened our emotional connection instead of strengthening it? As Lily's 7th birthday approached, my parents sent an expensive dollhouse but didn't attend the party, claiming a last-minute opportunity to join friends at a casino resort. I swallowed my disappointment and helped Lily write them a thank you note. When we FaceTimed to thank them, they spoke to her for less than 5 minutes before asking me about increasing the weekly amount to $1,200 due to rising costs. I agreed without discussion, ignoring the knot forming in my stomach. The following months brought the same pattern. Expensive gifts arrived for holidays and birthdays, but my parents themselves were increasingly absent. When they did visit, conversations centered on their recent purchases or upcoming expenses. They rarely asked about Lily's activities or our lives. James grew increasingly frustrated, while I continued making excuses that sounded hollow even to my own ears. As Lily's 8th birthday approached, I decided to make a special effort to involve my parents. I planned an elaborate party at our home with a magician, custom cake, and decorations featuring Lily's favorite characters. 6 weeks before the event, I called my parents to secure their commitment. This is a really important birthday for Lily, I emphasized. She specifically asked if you would be there. She misses you both so much. Of course we will be there, Mom assured me. We wouldn't miss our only granddaughter's special day, Dad chimed in from the extension. Tell the little princess we might even have a surprise for her. Their enthusiasm reassured me. Perhaps I had been overthinking the situation. Maybe this party would reset our family dynamic and remind my parents of what truly mattered. In the weeks leading up to the party, I sent gentle reminders and updates about the plans. My parents confirmed multiple times that they would arrive early to help set up. Lily was ecstatic, talking nonstop about showing Grandma and Grandpa her new gymnastics moves and the science project that had won first prize at school. 2 days before the party, I called to finalize details. Mom answered, sounding distracted. "Everything is still good for Saturday, right?" I asked. "You two will be here around 10 to help set up before guests arrive at noon." There was a brief pause before Mom responded. "Yes, of course. We might be a little late, though. Dad has a quick appointment in the morning, but we should be there by 11 at the latest." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. "Great," I said with forced cheerfulness. "Lily can't wait to see you both." The night before the party, I texted both parents a reminder. Dad replied with a thumbs-up emoji, which struck me as uncharacteristically casual, but I didn't dwell on it. I went to bed feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension, hoping tomorrow would be the beginning of a more balanced relationship with my parents. I woke early on the morning of Lily's birthday, my mind racing with last-minute party preparations. James had taken Lily out for a special birthday breakfast, giving me time to set up. I checked my phone immediately, half expecting a message from my parents about their arrival time. There was nothing. By 9:30, I had inflated dozens of balloons, hung streamers, and arranged party favors. I texted my parents again. "Good morning. Just checking if you are still planning to arrive by 11? Need any directions?" No response came. I continued setting up while checking my phone every few minutes. By 10:15, with no word from them, I called. The call went straight to voicemail on both phones. I left cheerful messages asking them to call me back as soon as possible. James and Lily returned home at 11, my daughter bursting through the door with a huge smile that showed her missing front tooth. She twirled in her new birthday dress, then looked around expectantly. "Are Grandma and Grandpa here yet?" she asked, excitement gleaming in her eyes. "Not yet, sweetie, but they will be soon," I promised, ignoring the growing knot in my stomach. "Why don't you show Daddy where you want your presents table while I try to call Grandma and Grandpa again?" I stepped onto the back porch and dialed my parents once more. Still no answer. I sent another text with more urgency. "Party starts in 1 hour. Please let me know if everything is okay or if you are running late." By 11:45, guests began arriving. Parents dropped off excited children carrying brightly wrapped gifts. My in-laws arrived early to help, James's mother immediately taking charge of organizing the food table while James' father entertained Lily and her friends with silly jokes. Their presence highlighted my own parents' absence. Lily kept running to the window whenever she heard a car, her face falling each time it wasn't her grandparents. I kept a bright smile while anxiety churned inside me. I called my parents repeatedly between greeting guests. Each unanswered call increased my worry and frustration. The party officially started at noon. The magician started his show, capturing the children's attention with colorful scarves and a rabbit that appeared from an empty hat. Lily clapped and laughed with her friends, but I noticed her glancing at the door repeatedly. During a break in the magic show, she sidled up to me. "Did you tell Grandma and Grandpa what time the party started?" she asked, her voice small. "I did, sweetie. I'm sure they're just running late," I answered, forcing confidence into my tone. "They might have gotten stuck in traffic or had car trouble. I will keep trying to reach them." As the party continued with lunch, games, and cake, my parents still went unanswered. James gave me concerned looks across the room, silently asking if there was any news. I shook my head each time, maintaining my composure for Lily's sake, while fury and worry battled inside me. By 3 o'clock, most guests had departed. Lily sat among a pile of opened presents, half-heartedly examining a new art set from one of her friends. The joy had faded from her eyes, replaced by confusion and hurt. I could see her struggling to understand why her grandparents, whom she adored, had missed her special day without even a phone call. James's parents helped clean up, their efficiency and warmth a stark contrast to my parents' unexplained absence. James's mother hugged Lily tightly and promised to take her shopping next weekend, clearly trying to make up for the disappointment. I was grateful for their kindness, but couldn't shake the growing anger toward my own parents. After everyone left, I sat in our quiet kitchen staring at my phone. 32 missed calls and 17 text messages sent with no response. I decided to check social media, something I rarely did with my parents since they weren't particularly active online. The air left my lungs as I opened my mother's Facebook page. There, posted just 3 hours earlier, was a photo of my parents grinning broadly at a blackjack table in a casino resort 2 hours away. Mom's caption read, "Weekend getaway with my handsome husband, feeling lucky today." They had lied. They hadn't had car trouble or gotten lost. They had chosen a casino over their granddaughter's birthday. The betrayal cut so deeply, I felt physically ill. With shaking hands, I dialed my father's number again. This time, on the 4th ring, he answered. "Hello?" He sounded annoyed, casino noise loud in the background. "Dad, where are you?" I managed to keep my voice steady despite the rage and hurt threatening to overwhelm me. "Lily's party is nearly over. She has been asking for you and Mom all day." There was a pause. Then my father cleared his throat. "Oh, was that today? We thought it was next weekend." The blatant lie stunk. I saw Mom's post on Facebook. "Dad, you are at the Golden Eagle Casino. You both promised Lily you would be here." His tone changed instantly, defensive and sharp. "Well, we needed a break. We are allowed to have our own lives, Paula. We don't have to drop everything for a child's party." I could not believe what I was hearing. "This isn't just any party, Dad. This is your granddaughter's birthday, the same granddaughter you promised to see today. Lily has been waiting for you all day." "Look," he snapped, his voice rising. "We are tired of these obligations. We worked hard all our lives, and now we want to enjoy ourselves. We don't count your family as something we have to report to. We are adults who make our own decisions." His words hit me like a physical blow. "We don't count your family?" After everything I had done for them, after all the money I had provided to make their lives comfortable, they didn't consider my husband and daughter as family worth prioritizing. "Fine," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I hope you enjoy your weekend. Goodbye." I hung up before he could respond, my entire body trembling with emotion. James found me there, phone clutched in my hand, sobbing silently. When I told him what my father had said, his face hardened in a way I had never seen before. Without a word, he pulled me into a tight embrace, letting me cry against his shoulder. Later that evening, after we had tried to salvage the rest of Lily's birthday with a special family movie night, I sat alone in our home office. The weight of my father's words pressed heavily on me. "We don't count your family." 5 words that revealed the truth I had been avoiding for years. The money I had been sending hadn't strengthened our bond, it had corrupted it. My parents no longer saw themselves as part of our family, but as independent entities entitled to financial support without reciprocal emotional investment. As this realization crystallized, I made a decision that would forever change our relationship. After tucking Lily into bed with another round of apologies for her grandparents' absence, I retreated to our home office, locking the door behind me. The tears came in waves as I processed the depth of the betrayal. These were my parents, the people who had worked multiple jobs to provide for me, who had celebrated every achievement, and who had welcomed Lily into the world with overwhelming love. How had money transformed them so completely? For nearly an hour, I sat in the dark, replaying years of interactions through this new lens. The missed events, the fading gratitude, the focus on material things rather than relationships. Everything formed a pattern I had willfully ignored. I thought of Lily's face when she realized her grandparents weren't coming, the brave smile she maintained for her friends while her heart broke. My child had been hurt by the very people I had tried so hard to support. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. James entered carrying 2 cups of tea, the comforting scent of chamomile filling the room as he sat beside me. "We need to talk about this," he said softly. I nodded, grateful for his calm presence. "What happened today goes beyond a missed birthday party," I admitted. "This is about a fundamental shift in our relationship with my parents." James sipped his tea thoughtfully before responding. "I have been watching this change for years. The more you give them financially, the less they give emotionally. Today was just the breaking point." I traced the rim of my mug, considering his words.
I think the weekly transfers have created a sense of entitlement. They no longer see the money as a gift, but as an obligation on my part. And obligations work both ways, James added. If you are obligated to provide for them financially, they feel obligated to show up for family events. That creates resentment, which is what we heard in your dad's voice today. His insight struck a chord. The financial arrangement had indeed created an unhealthy dynamic in which love and appreciation had been replaced by expectation and resentment. My parents no longer saw themselves as part of our family, but as independent entities entitled to financial support without reciprocal emotional investment. As this realization crystallized, I made a decision that would forever change our relationship. After tucking Lily into bed with another round of apologies for her grandparents' absence, I retreated to our home office, locking the door behind me. The tears came in waves as I processed the depth of the betrayal. These were my parents, the people who had worked multiple jobs to provide for me, who had celebrated every achievement, and who had welcomed Lily into the world with overwhelming love. How had money transformed them so completely? For nearly an hour, I sat in the dark, replaying years of interactions through this new lens. The missed events, the fading gratitude, the focus on material things rather than relationships. Everything formed a pattern I had willfully ignored. I thought of Lily's face when she realized her grandparents weren't coming, the brave smile she maintained for her friends while her heart broke. My child had been hurt by the very people I had tried so hard to support. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. James entered carrying 2 cups of tea, the comforting scent of chamomile filling the room as he sat beside me.
The relationship I had known with my parents was over, but perhaps ending the financial dependence could eventually lead to something healthier. The next morning, after James took Lily on a makeup birthday outing to the zoo, I sat down at my computer. With steady hands, I logged into my banking accounts. One by one, I canceled the automatic transfers to my parents' accounts. I removed their names from the credit card I had provided for emergencies. I changed the passwords on the online shopping accounts I had set up for them. Each click felt simultaneously painful and liberating. I was dismantling 3 years of financial support, but also 3 years of growing toxicity. When the last account was closed, I sat back and took a deep breath. Then I composed a text message to both my parents. Mom and Dad, after a lot of thought following yesterday's events, I have decided to end the weekly financial support I have been providing. Yesterday made it clear that our relationship has become unhealthy and imbalanced. The money that was meant to help you live comfortably has instead created distance between us and hurt Lily deeply. I hope that without this financial aspect, we can eventually rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine care. I will always be grateful for the sacrifices you made for me growing up, but I need to protect my own family now. I am here if you want to talk. Paula. I read it over 3 times before pressing send, then turned off my phone, knowing the response would be immediate and likely volatile. For the next hour, I sat in silence, alternating between certainty that I had made the right decision and waves of guilt about cutting off my aging parents. What if they truly needed the money for essentials? What if this pushed them away permanently? What if Lily lost her grandparents entirely because of my choice? James returned with Lily that afternoon, her spirits lifted by the zoo trip and ice cream. Seeing her smile again reinforced my resolve. My primary responsibility was to this child, to protect her from further disappointment and hurt. When I finally turned my phone back on, it immediately began vibrating with incoming messages and missed call notifications. 6 voicemails from Mom, 4 from Dad, and dozens of text messages ranging from confused to angry to pleading. I steeled myself and listened to the first voicemail from my mother. Paula, what is this message about? There must be some mistake. Call me immediately. Mom sounded genuinely confused, as though the connection between yesterday's absence and today's decision was incomprehensible to her. The second voicemail, left just 10 minutes later, had a different tone. Paula, we count on that money for our bills. You cannot just cut us off without warning. This is completely irresponsible and cruel. Call me right now. Each subsequent message grew increasingly frantic and accusatory. By the 6th voicemail, Mom was sobbing, her words barely comprehensible as she accused me of abandoning them after all they had done for me. Dad's messages were shorter but more cutting, calling me ungrateful and selfish, threatening to cut all ties if I didn't reinstate the payments immediately.
The text messages followed a similar pattern of escalation. The final one from my mother sent a chill through me. "We are coming over tomorrow morning to discuss this insanity face to face. Be prepared to explain yourself." I showed the messages to James, who immediately suggested we take Lily to his parents' house tomorrow to avoid exposing her to the confrontation. I agreed, grateful for his foresight and support. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say to my parents, hoping I could make them understand that this decision came from a place of love, not punishment. The next morning, James left with Lily right after breakfast. I cleaned the house nervously, an automatic response to anxiety I had inherited from my mother. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door to face the consequences of my decision. My parents stood on my doorstep, their faces a study in contrasting emotions. Mom looked like she had been crying all night, her eyes puffy and red, while Dad's expression was hard, anger radiating from every line on his face. I stepped back silently, inviting them in without words. The tension followed us like a physical presence as they entered the living room. We sat across from each other, the coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mom broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Paula, what is going on? Why would you suddenly cut us off like this?" I clasped my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. "This isn't sudden, Mom. This has been building for a long time. Yesterday was just the final straw." Dad scoffed. "So we miss one birthday party and you punish us financially? Is that how little you think of us?" His words ignited the hurt and anger I had been trying to contain. "One birthday party?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "This isn't about one party. This is about a pattern that has been developing for years. You have been missing important events in Lily's life regularly. You have stopped calling unless it is about money. And yesterday, you deliberately chose a casino over your granddaughter's birthday, then lied about it. When I confronted you, Dad, you said, and I quote, 'We don't count your family.'" Mom looked at Dad in shock. "Thomas, you said that to her?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "She is taking it out of context. I meant we don't count her family as people we need to report our whereabouts to. We're adults." I shook my head. The context was clear, Dad, and it hurt deeply, but more importantly, it made me realize how our relationship has changed. The money was meant to help you live comfortably, not to create an obligation that you resent. Mom leaned forward, her expression desperate. "Paula, we don't resent you or your family. We love you, but we need that money. We have bills, commitments." "What kind of bills could possibly require $4,000 a month when your house is paid off?" I asked. Mom and Dad exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them that raised my suspicions. Dad cleared his throat. "We have made some investments." "What investments?" I pressed, my financial advisor instincts kicking in. After more uncomfortable glances, the truth emerged in fragments and reluctant admissions.
They had taken out a second mortgage on their paid-off house to invest in a friend's restaurant venture that had failed. They had accumulated over $30,000 in credit card debt buying luxury items and taking expensive trips. They had signed a 3-year lease on a new luxury car with payments they couldn't afford without my support. As the full picture of their financial recklessness came into focus, I felt a mixture of disappointment and vindication. They had become completely dependent on my weekly transfers, but not for necessities as I had intended. They had built a house of cards on the assumption that my financial support would continue indefinitely. "So you see why we need you to reconsider," Mom pleaded. "We will lose everything if you stop the payments." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I understand you are in a difficult position now, but that doesn't change my decision. The financial relationship between us has become toxic. It needs to end for all our sakes." Dad's face flushed with anger. "After everything we did for you growing up, the sacrifices we made, this is how you repay us? By throwing us to the wolves when we need you?" His words stung, but I held firm. "I haven't forgotten those sacrifices, Dad. That is why I wanted to help in the first place. But this situation isn't healthy for any of us, including you. You have become dependent on money that isn't yours. making financial decisions based on my income rather than your own. Mom began to cry openly. What are we supposed to do now? We can't make the payments on our own. I suggested practical steps they could take. Speaking from my financial advisor experience, they could sell the luxury car and get something more affordable. They could downsize to a smaller home and use the equity to pay off debts. They could speak with a financial counselor about debt management plans. Each suggestion was met with resistance and increasing hostility. Dad finally stood, towering over me. If you go through with this, you are no longer our daughter. We will cut all ties with you and your family. The threat hung in the air between us. A year ago, it would have devastated me. Today, after seeing how little they valued their relationship with Lily, it felt like confirmation that I was making the right choice. That would be your decision, I said quietly. I hope you don't choose that path, but I understand if you need time to process this change. My decision about the money stands, but my door remains open if you want a relationship that isn't based on financial support. Dad stormed toward the front door, pausing to deliver one final blow. Don't expect us at Christmas or any other family event. You have made your choice. Mom hesitated, torn between following her husband and staying to continue pleading. I love you, Paula, she whispered before hurrying after Dad. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the house. I sat motionless, absorbing the reality that I might have just lost my parents forever. The pain was acute, but strangely clarifying. Their reaction had revealed exactly how conditional their love had become. My thoughts were interrupted by a small voice from the hallway. Mommy, is everything okay? I turned to find Lily standing there, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. She must have returned with James and overheard at least part of the confrontation. My heart sank at the thought of her witnessing such ugliness. I opened my arms and she ran into them, burying her face against my shoulder. Where did Grandma and Grandpa go? Why were they yelling? I held her close, trying to find words that would explain without damaging her perception of her grandparents. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things, sweetheart. Grandma and Grandpa and I are having a disagreement right now, and they need some time to think about things. Are they mad because they missed my birthday? Lily asked, her innocence breaking my heart. Partly, I admitted. But it is more complicated than that. Sometimes relationships between grown-ups go through hard times, just like sometimes you and your friends have arguments. We all need to figure out how to be better to each other. James appeared in the doorway, his expression asking silent questions about how the confrontation had gone. I gave a small shake of my head, indicating we would talk later. The weeks that followed were difficult. My parents launched a campaign of harassment, calling it all hours, sending manipulative text messages, and even enlisting extended family members to pressure me into reinstating the payments. Aunts and uncles who had barely communicated with me in years suddenly called to lecture me about family obligation and elder care. I maintained my position calmly but firmly with everyone, explaining that the decision was made to restore health to our family relationships, not to punish my parents. Few understood, most taking my parents' side after hearing only their version of events. The constant communication became so disruptive to our daily lives that I finally had to block my parents' numbers temporarily. When they began showing up at our house unannounced, often late at night, James suggested we consider legal options. With great reluctance, I consulted an attorney who advised a temporary restraining order given the escalating nature of the harassment. The day the restraining order was served was one of the darkest of my life. The legal document formalized the breakdown of our family in black and white. That night, I cried myself to sleep in James's arms, grieving for the loving parents I had known before. Money changed everything. Lily, perceptive beyond her years, noticed the absence of her grandparents despite our efforts to shield her. We explained in age-appropriate terms that Grandma and Grandpa needed time away to think about some grown-up problems.
She accepted this with a child's resilience, but occasionally asked when they would return, each question a fresh wound on my heart. The restraining order brought blessed quiet to our lives, but the emotional aftermath lingered. I began seeing a therapist to process my guilt, grief, and anger. James supported me unconditionally, not once suggesting I had made the wrong decision, despite the turmoil it caused. His parents stepped up their involvement in Lily's life, providing the grandparent presence she needed and demonstrating what healthy family relationships should look like. Gradually, our family found a new normal.
The pain didn't disappear, but it became manageable, a dull ache rather than the sharp agony of fresh betrayal. I began to recognize that while I had lost the parents I thought I had, perhaps I had never truly had them in the form I imagined. Money had simply revealed existing cracks in our relationship, rather than creating them from nothing. 6 months passed without contact from my parents. The temporary restraining order expired, but the phone calls and unexpected visits did not resume. At first, the silence was a relief after months of harassment. Gradually, it evolved into a different kind of pain, the ache of absence rather than the stress of conflict. In that quiet space, I found room to reflect more deeply on what had happened. My weekly therapy sessions became a lifeline as I worked through complicated emotions about my parents, money, and the nature of family bonds. My therapist helped me recognize patterns in my relationship with my parents that predated the financial arrangement, subtle signs of conditional love I had missed or chosen to ignore. Did you notice that your parents' approval always seemed connected to your achievements? She asked during one particularly insightful session. Even before the money, their love seemed linked to what you could provide, whether that was academic success, career advancement, or eventually financial support. The observation resonated painfully. My parents had always been proudest when I accomplished something that reflected well on them. My scholarship, my career, my marriage to a successful man, each had elevated their social standing in some way. Had I subconsciously created the financial arrangement to maintain their approval and love? These revelations were difficult, but ultimately healing. I began to understand that ending the financial support wasn't just about setting boundaries with my parents, but about breaking my own unhealthy patterns and beliefs about love and worthiness. The money I had previously sent to my parents, I now redirected to Lily's education fund. Every week when I made the transfer, I reminded myself that this investment carried no emotional strings, no expectation of gratitude or compliance. It was a gift of love in its purest form, given without condition to a child who deserved security and opportunity. James and I grew closer through the crisis, our partnership strengthened by navigating difficult waters together. I realized how fortunate I was to have a husband who understood family dysfunction and supported healthy boundaries without judgment. Our relationship had weathered a significant storm and emerged stronger for it. One unexpected challenge came in explaining the prolonged absence of my parents to Lily. After 3 months without contact, she stopped asking when they would visit, which broke my heart in a different way. Children should not have to learn so young that adult love can be conditional and fragile. When she asked one night why Grandma and Grandpa didn't love her anymore, I held her close and assured her the situation had nothing to do with her. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt the people they love. I explained, it doesn't mean they don't love you, just that they are struggling with their own problems right now. The explanation felt inadequate, but Lily seemed to accept it with the resilience children often show in the face of adult complexity. James's parents continued to provide consistent grandparent love, helping fill the void left by my parents' absence. 4 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "Apology." My hands trembled as I opened it, unsure what to expect. The message was brief, but seemingly sincere. Mom acknowledged that their behavior had been inexcusable, particularly missing Lily's birthday for a casino trip. She admitted they had become entitled and had taken my generosity for granted. She didn't ask for the financial support to resume, but instead requested a chance to talk in person with a therapist present if I preferred. I read the email multiple times, analyzing every word for manipulation or insincerity. After discussing it with both James and my therapist, I decided to respond cautiously, suggesting we meet with a family counselor as a first step. Mom agreed immediately. Our first session was awkward and tense. Mom came alone, explaining that Dad wasn't ready to participate yet, but had given his blessing for her to begin the reconciliation process. The counselor created a safe space for us to express our feelings without accusation or defense. Mom revealed that the months without my financial support had been difficult, but ultimately clarifying. They had been forced to downsize dramatically, selling their house and luxury car to pay off debt. They had moved to a small apartment and were living on their combined Social Security and Dad's modest pension. The most difficult part, she admitted with tears streaming down her face, was recognizing how money had corrupted their values and relationships. She confessed, "We became people I don't recognize or like. We forgot what really matters. We forgot how to be parents and grandparents." Her vulnerability disarmed me. I shared my own pain at watching them choose material comforts over a relationship with Lily, how their absence had hurt my child, and how their threats and harassment had confirmed my worst fears about the conditional nature of their love. By the end of that first session, no magical reconciliation had occurred, but a door had opened. The counselor recommended small, manageable steps forward, beginning with cards and letters to Lily instead of in-person visits, which felt appropriate given the broken trust. Over the next few months, Mom attended counseling sessions regularly. Dad eventually joined, initially defensive, but gradually more open to examining his role in the family breakdown. They sent weekly cards to Lily with short, thoughtful messages. They made no demands, asked for no money, and respected every boundary we established. 6 months after that first difficult email, we arranged a brief supervised visit with Lily at a neutral location, a park where she could feel comfortable and leave if things became uncomfortable. I watched with cautious optimism as my parents approached, noticeably aged by the events of the past year, yet wearing genuine smiles. Lily was hesitant at first, clinging to my hand as they greeted her. But when Grandpa asked if she would show him how high she could swing, a flicker of their old connection returned. By the end of the 30-minute visit, she was talking more freely, telling them about school and her new friends. As we prepared to leave, Dad took me aside. "I was wrong, Paula," he said sincerely. "The money changed me, changed us, and not for the better. I lost sight of what truly matters. I'm not asking for another chance because I know I don't deserve one, but I hope with time you might allow us to be part of Lily's life again, on whatever terms you set." His humility, so unlike the entitled anger from our last encounter, touched something deep within me. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Dad," I replied honestly, "but I'm willing to see where this path leads, as long as you understand that my priority will always be protecting Lily." He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "That's how it should be. You are a better parent than I ever was." That brief exchange marked the beginning of a slow, tentative reconciliation. Over the following months, the visits became more regular but remained supervised and structured. My parents accepted these limitations without complaint, grateful for any chance to repair what they had damaged. The money I once sent them never resurfaced in conversation. The financial connection was permanently severed, allowing space for a relationship built on more authentic foundations to grow. My parents adjusted to their more modest lifestyle and even seemed to find peace in simplicity. The journey of healing continues to this day. Trust rebuilds slowly through small, consistent moments of respect. Some days I still feel anger rise when I recall my father's cruel words or my mother's manipulative tears. Other days, I feel genuine hope that a healthier relationship may eventually emerge from the ashes of what was lost. The most profound lesson in all of this has been the true nature of family bonds. Love with conditions isn't love at all. Financial support, though well-intentioned, cannot replace emotional presence and genuine care. Money has the power to reveal character, sometimes in painful ways. But that revelation, however difficult, is ultimately valuable. I no longer measure my worth by my parents' approval or my ability to provide for them financially. Instead, I focus on building a home where Lily feels unconditionally loved, where her worth is never tied to achievement or financial contribution, where she knows with absolute certainty that she will always matter no matter what. If you have ever found yourself in a similar situation, supporting family members financially only to watch the relationship change in unexpected ways, I hope my story helps you recognize the warning signs sooner than I did. Setting healthy boundaries around money and family is not selfish. It is necessary for genuine relationships to thrive. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is stop enabling destructive patterns, even when it breaks our hearts. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, please leave a comment and share your own experience with family and financial boundaries. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your immediate family? How did you handle it? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found value in this story, and share it with someone who may need to hear that it's okay to prioritize emotional well-being over financial obligation. We are all learning and growing together on this journey of family, love, and the complicated dance between money and relationships.